RC, what does this loss mean for the Cowboys?
This loss is huge. I believe that the way that this team was constructed, who they were defensively, they were on an historic pace. And I know people are going to say, oh, it's only 2 games. But you're talking about a Hall of Fame talent that just got nearly $100 million contract in the offseason. The reason he got that is not just because of his coverage. It's not because last year we saw that he could be locked down. It's because of the way he turns the football over. You go back to last week's game against Zach Wilson. They go deep on him with Garrett Wilson. It's a PBU. Later on in the game, he gets the interception. We have seen him do that for the last 4 years in the NFL. And you add him to Micah Parsons, the three-headed monster they have at the safety position. Stephon Gilmore, the future Hall of Famer on the other side. D-Law. This was the defense that we were going to talk about, like the Baltimore Ravens, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like the Steelers, like LOB, like the Jets in their heyday with Rex Ryan. That's where this team was going, and he's a huge part of that. Now, they aren't in the place that they were in last year where you could just go away from Trevon Diggs if Deron Bland moves to the outside. Now, Jordan Lewis, who was the starting nickel before he was injured last year, gets an opportunity to be inserted into the starting lineup. This team could still be good, but this team with Trevon Diggs was going to go down in the history books. It was going to be a defense that we talked about for years to come that revolutionized defensive play in this era of football. There were going to be this eras of football that the team that we looked at that said they brought defense back. Along with the San Francisco 49ers, they were the team that was the hardest to score on. They ran sideline to sideline. They turned the ball over. And I believe there's going to be an adjustment for Dan Quinn in the way that he calls plays. They're still Super Bowl contenders, but this is definitely a huge hit to who they are defensively.
I mean, it's a major hit, right? Because you talk about the Dallas Cowboys, they play cover 1 50% of the time, more than any other team in all of football. And what that allows them to do is to erase your team's best receiver. Well, now when you have to go to your backup, and now who used to be the nickel has to move outside to the outside corner, then now the inside corner comes in. So now you got to fish, right? And the front end and the back end of this defense is tied together. The coverage helps the pass rush. The pass rush helps the coverage. And now you're going to have to lean help over to that side. Now you can't, take that rat player that, they had last week with Vander Esch and use him as a low help because he's free. Because that's what happens. When you have outside great corners, they give you the ability to free up a player to be like that jack of all trades and be able to take away other teams if they have a good tight end. Now you can double them because you have the outside locked up. This team would have been one of those teams that we talked about. Me and Ryan have spent plenty of time as the #1 defense in the league during our time in the league. But we did it differently, right? Darrelle Revis, Antonio Cromartie, that allowed us to do different things. Chris McAllister, Samari Rolle, it allowed us to be able to say, okay, you can blitz this guy. You can be unpredictable. Now you can't do that anymore. Now you're going to have to, maybe blitz people to get pressure, or now you got to swipe linebackers out to take away short routes. This is a major, major blow for Dallas. And like Stephen A. always says, just wait. Something bad always happens.
No, don't start that. Don't start that.
Let me tell you. No. First of all, I wouldn't do that right now, in all seriousness, RC. Yeah. This is a season-ending injury, so I'm certainly not going to joke about that with Trevon Diggs, my brother. Respect. I got a lot of love for him.
Yeah.
And I, this ain't the time for me to joke about the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not going to do that to them. What I will say, however, is that they are where I thought they would be. And what I mean by that is that I'm looking at Jordan Lewis. I'm looking at Deron Bland. I'm hearing things about them, and I've been hearing things about them coming into this season. And so when you look at Micah Parsons' ability, along with DeMarcus Lawrence and the rest of the crew, to get to the quarterback, when you look at the secondary of the Dallas Cowboys, which was considered to be the deepest secondary in the National Football League, I understand that it's not the greatest situation in the world. We hope that Trevon Diggs is going to get healthy and he'll be back next year. My heart goes out to him. I got to reach out to that brother just to let them know that. But I got to tell you that the bottom line is that based on the depth that they have available to them, combined with their ability to get to the quarterback, and then you add to that just the suspect talent in the NFC overall. We said at the beginning of the season, it's the Eagles, it's the Cowboys, it's the San Francisco. And then there's everybody else. So if we're not talking about the Eagles and we're not talking about the San Francisco 49ers, you still look at the Dallas Cowboys as being better than anybody else in the NFC, even without Trevon Diggs. And so the way that I look at it is that, again, it can be devastating as it pertains to the level of dominance that they were expected to put forth defensively. But it is not as if they suddenly won't be able to do that without him. You still got Stephon Gilmore. You still got the other dudes that I mentioned. You still got the ability to get to the quarterback. Their linebacker core may be a bit suspect in some people's eyes with Van Der Esch and those other guys, even though you can tackle. What are you going to do in terms of coverage? But at the end of the day, they still have enough to be a top 3, arguably a top 2 team in the NFC, even without Trevon Diggs.
No, you're absolutely right, but it makes it a lot more difficult. And now teams can able to game plan around. Listen, when you have somebody his talent, and RC hit on it, his ability to turn the ball over and put you on a short field as an offense is tremendous. It's not just that he's a great guy that has PBUs. He gets the ball in his hands, and that is a major, major skill. That is, and now you talk about Stephon Gilmore at 32 years old, who has been broken down in previous years. Now you're going to put more on him because now he has to take the top dog. Now instead of maybe getting Devontae Smith or the player that he matches up best with, right, from a stylistic standpoint as far as cover 1, cover 2, because everybody struggles with different types of receivers. Now he has to take the best receiver, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on him and his body to hold up. This is a marathon, and it's going to be a battle of attrition when you get to the end. It's going to be about who can stay healthy. So when they go against San Francisco, who I believe they play in a couple of weeks, when they have to play the Philadelphia Eagles, now what's going to happen to that guy opposite? He's going to get all the targets.
RC, tell me this. Are the Niners now the clear-cut favorites in the NFC?
You know what? I still believe that the Dallas Cowboys are on the same tier as the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know if I'm going to take them off of that level with Trevon Diggs' injury until I get an opportunity to see them play, see how Dan Quinn adjusts. But when you watch the Niners last week, what stuck out to me was they just have better players than people. And listen, the New York Giants, Molly, and I'm sorry, your New York Giants defense sometimes in some positions and in some places could be soft as tissue, right? Like real life hospital cotton. And when you look at Deebo Samuel running through people, George Kittle running through people, Christian McCaffrey, you have a guy like Brock Purdy who doesn't have to do a lot. What he does is he diagnoses defenses extremely well. He gets the football out of his hands into the hands of his playmakers. And they are dominant, and not dominant in a way where it's like Kyle Shanahan's is just X's and O's out of their seats or out of their pants every week. No. He's just making sure that the really good dudes on his team have the football in their hands where they can make plays. And then defensively, when they get an opportunity to pin their ears back, there's no team better at rushing the passer with 4, especially from the interior. We point to Nick Bosa all the time. They've upgraded. You go Armstead and Hargraves in the inside. They are big time with linebackers that are sideline to sideline, and I know Bart loves it because they're throwback players when it comes to the way they put their face mask on folks. This team is really good, and as long as Brock Purdy stays healthy, as long as his arm strength can be maintained where it is right now, this is going to be a difficult team to beat, and I believe that demon or that monster that they've been to the Dallas Cowboys only gets bigger in the shadow of losing Trevon Diggs.
Well, let me say this. That's a good point, that last point, RC, no doubt about that. But I also think we've got to point to a couple of things. Number one, you've got a guy like Brock Purdy, who's undefeated as a starter at 8-0 with 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, completing 67% of his passes since he's become the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. They have not lost a regular season game since Christian McCaffrey has arrived. And he's got a touchdown in 12 consecutive games. We've got to pay attention to that as well. Here's where things get interesting. You brought up Trevon Diggs and how that ultimately compromises the potential for success of the Dallas Cowboys, particularly when you talk about going up against the San Francisco 49ers. Well, that's one element. Here's the second. The NFC Championship game took place. Remember when Deebo Samuel, Molly, came on the show during Super Bowl week while we were out in Arizona? Of course, and it's the right thing for him to say, and I'm sure he believes it, but it's also not far-fetched when he said, listen, man, we lost 4 quarterbacks last year, 4 quarterbacks. In the NFC Championship game, as a reminder to everybody out there, the San Francisco 49ers were decimated with injuries at the quarterback position, so much so that Christian McCaffrey had to line up behind center, and they couldn't even throw the ball. The game was over because they literally did not have a quarterback on the roster who could throw the football because everybody had gotten hurt. And so that's an element of motivation that can't be ignored as well. The 49ers are not only a talented team knocking on the door, they're a talented team that's knocking on the door that believe they should have kicked in the door last year if something unprecedented, like 4 quarterbacks in the same season on the same roster, getting hurt to the point where you don't even have one for an NFC Championship game for the last 2.5 quarters. That is what happened to the San Francisco 49ers, and I think that's the kind of thing that we cannot ignore when we look at teams being highly motivated. I don't think anybody has them beat in that department, motivation.
Yeah, you talk about, irreplaceable players, and you would say McCaffrey is that player for them. The first game he played 100% of the snaps. They have to be wary of wearing him down because it is a marathon, not a sprint. They have to figure out a way how to steal reps away and let other people take some of the snaps.
Yeah.
When you look at what the key to this San Francisco team is they just wear you down. They're not going to blow you out. And listen, Lynch built this team uniquely different from most teams in NFL. When you look at, they don't have that Justin Jefferson receiver. They don't have that receiver that goes down and he's like Randy Moss. They have yak guys because they understand in this league, if you can get the ball out of your hands quickly and make a decision, that it's always a hole in the defense. And understand that how football is played today and how practice goes, you don't practice tackling, you don't go live, you spend most of the time tackling donuts and bags. So now when you get into the game, you have to tackle a guy like Ayuk, or you have to tackle a guy like Kittles, or you have to tackle a guy like Samuels. Guys aren't designed to be able to do that. So he gets his athletes the ball in space and saying, I don't think you can tackle them consistently, and we're going to wear you down because we're going to physically continue to pound you. And you see teams break, and that levee break in the 3rd and 4th quarter. I believe San Francisco had 200 yards of yak. And for people out there, that's yards after the catch. You saw Debo running around, taking people's chains out there after he caught the ball. That's because they have those type of athletes, and that's easier to get the ball. And Brock Purdy doesn't push the ball down the field. He throws the ball 10, 15 yards. And they're doing something different than most teams do. And when you go against it, it's difficult because you have to tackle these guys in space 60, 70 times a game when you get out there, and they have the most complete back in all of football in Christian McCaffrey.